Hey, well, welcome to everyone. Isn't it wonderful that we can all come together in this way? And please feel free to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them, and hope that my answers will be of some benefit to you.
So before we begin, please allow us together as a global community to pay our respects to you as you are here in this presence with us, offering us this very precious time of yours. So together, brothers and sisters, let us all now bow by chanting the Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Avivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami. Sukadipano Bhagavato Savata Sangho Sanghang Namami. So before we begin, may we invite you to guide us in a short guided meditation, just to calm our mind and to prepare the Q&A session, please.
Yes, of course. How long should it be for?
As you wish, maybe 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
Thank you.
So I'd like everyone to sit comfortably and sit in such a way that you feel you're taking responsibility for your life. So this is one of the reasons why we don't lean back against anything when we are sitting, because that sense of relying on our own effort to support the physical body is the very first step in the path towards being one's own refuge. And sitting in meditation, we are exploring, we're learning, we're not trying to get anything, but we are interested in the nature of the body and the mind, and learning how to see through its assumptions and attachments and imbalances, and it's letting go of all the causes of suffering that we create moment by moment, that we find our way ahead in practice. So this is a time, meditation is a time to look within, and it's a time for developing the strength and the stability of mindfulness. So samadhi is really stable mindfulness. It's what happens. Samadhi is what happens when your mindfulness and clear comprehension and your effort are in balance and they become stable. So mindfulness means bearing in mind the instructions, bringing to mind what needs to be brought in mind to create and a positive feeling and an interest and a contentment with the meditation object, because the mind slips away from the object into thoughts and memories, primarily because it lacks that interest and contentment and faith in the practice. So meditation means we're trying to create the most constructive and useful relationship between the mind and the meditation object. We want a clarity of mind. The clear comprehension, sampajanya, can also be understood as alertness, wakefulness. So the mindfulness is what keeps the mind with the job in hand, with the object. Sampajanya is that alertness and awareness of the context and whether or not our mindfulness is balanced, or if we need to put a little bit more effort, a little bit more relaxation. So in the time when we meditate, we're just clear with ourselves that this is not time to dwell upon or to give a harbor to or to take any delight in thoughts and memories, but it's to plumb the present moment, to learn how to dwell in the present moment with clarity, with alertness, with joy. And the present moment is not the goal of meditation, but we can compare it to the classroom. This is where we learn the Four Noble Truths. This is the classroom for the most important thing we'll ever learn. So putting down all our anxieties and worries and thoughts, and learning how to go within to create a stable, alert awareness which allows the nature of things to manifest, allows us to understand the nature of the body and mind. Initially, the mind's still going to jump around. Don't be discouraged or frustrated. It's kind of normal. But just as a mother or father doesn't get angry, I hope, when the child is naughty, it's just the nature of a child, just the nature of the mind to wander around. Very kindly and firmly bring it back. Looking within, creating that interest, contentment with the meditation object, ensuring there is clarity and alertness in the mind, fine-tuning the effort, constantly awake to the need to increase or to relax effort as the meditation proceeds. So you would like to open your eyes and end the meditation at this point.
Thank you, Ajahn. So we'd like to invite Ajahn to please help us with some answers to the questions that some of us may have in our practice. So to our friends here in the community, if this is the first time that you're joining us, we will do questions and answers via this button. So if you have any questions, please feel free to click on the digital raise hand button, and then we'll invite you to unmute. And if you could direct your question to Ajahn, describe it in a short and succinct manner, such that we can address it directly. Okay. First up, I think Ajahn, it's such a pleasure to be here in your midst, and particularly I feel as I'm meditating, actually in your hermitage, under the banyan trees, with the crickets and the insects, surrounding.
Can you hear the insects? Can you hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They're very nice.
I hope it's not too disturbing. Okay.
They're very nice. Okay. There are a couple of questions that have been sent in advance. If I may just first start off with the first question first. Dear Ajahn, I'm a very socially anxious person. I feel uncomfortable and self-conscious when I'm around anyone except with the people in my immediate family. When I'm alone or among family, I feel relaxed and at peace. Because of this, I do not socialize. And I am fortunate to have work which I can do from home and with minimal interaction with others. So I'm largely a happy person in my life, but people often try to push me to socialize more and to step out of my comfort zone because they regard my avoidance of people as unhealthy. I've tried doing many outgoing things in the past and hope that it will help me overcome my anxiety, but it has never worked. Is it wrong for me to avoid people so that I can be more at peace? Ajahn, could you please help this person in the question, please?
Well, the influence of Western psychology is felt throughout the world, and one of the foundations, I think, of most psychotherapies and psychologies is that mental health is measured to a certain extent by your ability to create, sustain what we call healthy relationships. So I think there is a kind of an extrovert bias, let's say, in the way most people look at life these days. I would recommend the questioner to read a book called Quiet, and it's what's it called? The Value of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, by a lady called Susan Cain, C-A-I-N, as I remember. So her thesis is that between a third and a half of the people in the world are basically introverted, and it's not something that's necessarily a problem, and that introverts have a big role to play in the world. And yeah, I think it's fine to, if you have a a liking or a preference to spend more time alone. I have this tendency myself, and I find if I created my own word. I don't think it's in the dictionary. It's like peopled out. If I spend too much time with people, I feel peopled out, and I have to retreat into solitude to get back to normal again. And at least when I was leading a more active life than I am now. But I think that this is quite normal and natural. And, when you're young, you try and fit in and do what people tell you. And then when you get to about 40 or so, you say, well, look, this is the way I am and it's okay for me. And I think that's fine. Nevertheless, if there is a lot of social anxiety, then there may well be some defilement or other, which is the cause of that. And if it doesn't manifest in social situations, it's not that it disappears altogether. It will manifest in some other way in your meditation practice or in your general relationship with things around you and the people around you. So I think that it really depends on you to what extent you want to make a little project out of this and to incorporate it into your Dhamma practice. My advice generally to people who don't have a choice and are thrust into social situations, they can't work at home and they have to put up with living with kind of busy in a busy environment, is that metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, is a very good antidote, because with social anxiety, one's tending to be very obsessed with how I'm seen by other people, and am I making a fool of myself, and do people like me, and I'm so clumsy and I'm unlikable, and all these kinds of negative thoughts. So they're all you're imagining thoughts coming to you as you're the object of all these different perceptions and ideas, and it's overwhelming. But by developing metta bhavana, then you flip it over. So it's what you can give, and you're not so worried about people's take on you. You're interested in how you can be kind, how you can be helpful, how you can create something good and wholesome and praiseworthy in your social life. So when you're sending out thoughts of loving kindness, then your mind is preoccupied with giving, and the quality of your actions and speech and mind, and you don't have any room left for, or hopefully not so much room left for, wondering about how you are seen by others. The other advice I would give is if you want to take this on as a project, it's a very simple advice where you just start off in very modest, unthreatening environments, and then just step by step, just try something which is a little bit more difficult for you. So as I don't know the questioner personally, or as I imagine I don't, then I can't be sure to what extent the social anxiety is the product of mental states that need to be faced in a social situation, and those which can simply be bypassed by a more solitary life. So this is something, as a meditator, we're constantly having to examine, look very closely at our intentions, at our thoughts, at our emotions, what upsets us, what uplifts us, what depresses us. And this is the grist of the mill of Dhamma practice, learning from all that's going on in your body and mind. So if there are things that really need to be looked at, and you're constantly turning your back on them in your personal life, then that definitely is something which needs to be looked at. It's possible that the social anxiety is just an external reflection of some imbalance that needs to be seen to. But overall, I would say that if your preference is to be alone and spend more time by yourself, I think that's good. I think it's a good thing to be more self-reliant, more reflective, and if you have that opportunity, then I say why not? I like myself. I don't have social anxiety, fortunately, but I certainly do like my own company.
Thank you, Tante Jan. So there is a follow-up question to this, which is, what is a consistent Dhamma practice?
What is a consistent Dhamma practice? Well, the immortal words of Luang Por Chah is like, when you feel diligent and full of inspiration, then you practice, and when you feel lazy and discouraged, then you practice. So that's how you're consistent. Analogy I would give is of farmers going out to their fields. Some days they want to go, some days they don't, some days it's hot, some days it's pouring with rain. And they're aware of those things, but they can't give them much importance, because if they don't go to their fields, they'll have no crop, and they won't have anything to eat, and they won't be able to support their family. So when you see the value, the importance of Dhamma practice, then all those challenges and difficulties and distractions which would prevent you from being consistent are seen in a different way. They're recognized, but they're not acted upon. So that's how we're consistent. It's that determination, come what may. This is it. This is what I need to be doing. And there's a lot to be learned by just weathering through, just keeping at it, even when there's not much joy and not much reward in it, but seeing these lazy, discouraged thoughts or depressed thoughts or anxious thoughts and so on arise and pass away, and seeing how hollow and insubstantial these voices are. When we believe them and we follow them, then the more we follow them, then the more real they become. But when you just say, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do this anyway, even if it's full of doubts, well, it's just a waste of time, you're not in the right mood, or it's just too much going on in my life right now, and so on. And say, yeah, well, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, you won't get any peace from it. You won't get any, I don't care, I'm just going to do it anyway. That's how you're consistent.
Thank you, Tanajan. So there are questions here with relation to asking for guidance on how to investigate mental pain. So in our practice, besides breath meditation, this person is asking about how can I dissect the pain into finer elements and to increase my awareness of the pain.
I'm not sure I quite understand what dissecting mental pain into finer elements might involve, but a few thoughts. Firstly, that there is no continual mental pain. It's not like you're in mental pain from the moment you wake up at night until the moment you go to sleep. You know, you may say, oh, I've just been traumatized or depressed for days, or, you know, all day, but it's not true really. When you look, it comes in waves. It becomes more or less intense, and sometimes can disappear altogether for a few moments, a few minutes, even an hour or two. And so this is the initial investigation, that looking to see how it's not a permanent feature of your mind. It may be the most prominent and the main actor in the drama of your life right now, but it's not all that's going on. There are moments and minutes and even hours when your mind is not traumatized, when this is not, it's not painful. So observing those moments when the mind is neutral, when there is neutral mental feeling, and those moments and times when there may even be pleasant mental feeling. And this allows you to step back from it somewhat. The ability to sustain mindfulness on an object of any kind, using the again, the Brahma Viharas and the loving kindness and compassion for oneself, is also very helpful. If you are meditating on your chosen object, it might be the breath, it might be a mantra, it might whatever, then if you find that the mind has become peaceful and clear and bright, then, and stable, then it can be possible just to introduce just a little bit of that pain into your mind. Just like open the door to it just a little bit. And then when you now recognize or re-experience that pain in the context of clarity and stability and the sense of well-being that samadhi provides us with, then it can be purified and it can lose its sting. So that's another piece of advice. The other thing with mental pain, it's important to investigate, is that there is the pain itself, and then there is the all that we add onto it. And here we see the main role of what we call vipavatanha. So you have a pain, and then together with the pain is not wanting to have the pain, being angry at having to feel this, resentful, or depressed, or full of despair. And so there are all kinds of emotional reactions to the mental pain, just as there are to physical pain, which make it far worse than it needs to be. And being able to unravel this and to recognize what we're adding on to the pain, this is something it's not an intellectual exercise. You need to have the power of mindfulness, stable mindfulness to do it, but it is possible. And as I say, as the mindfulness develops, then the emotional interference with or overlay onto the basic pain falls away, and can see it in a new light. So yeah, these are the advice to practice metta for oneself, to see the fluctuations and the between mental pain, neutral mental feeling, positive mental feeling, to investigate the way which we add on to mental pain with negative emotion, and learning how to stop doing that. And it can take a huge amount of the burden. The Buddha says it's like putting poison on an arrow. So you've been shot with an arrow, and it's painful enough, but we instead of healing it, we rub poison into the wound. And so although there's always going to be the pain of the arrow itself for some time, we can take some charge and do something about refraining from putting poison on the wound.
Thank you, Ajahn. Well, we would like to now switch across to in-person Q&A. I'd like to please invite Katerina from Australia to ask her first question. Please, Katerina.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening, Ajahn.
Good evening.
I have a question around trust. So it's a two-part question. First one is, what is your definition of trust? And second one is, what is stopping trust in ourselves as well as between people? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that trust can be, in some cases, an act of faith, where you just decide to trust somebody and hope that they live up to it. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. The other kind of trust, I would say, is that which comes from knowing somebody over a period of time and seeing that the way that they behave, the way that they speak, their as Buddhists, we take the 5 precepts as a good standard, as someone who can keep the 5 precepts, as someone who keeps their word, someone who keeps their promises, keeps their word, doesn't deceive you. And so by seeing someone's integrity, and someone who has principles, and although they may fall away from them every now and again, it's kind of normal, but someone who has that sincerity and really trying to live up to their ideals and their principles, and that sense of goodness and integrity, that's the basis for trust. I think to return to the point about the 5 precepts, I think in any relationship or family, when the members of people involved say to each other, look, I still have anger and aggression and so on in my heart, but I promise you that I will not act upon it. I won't speak with a heart full of anger. This is something you can do as an act of will. You can't will yourself to be free of anger or aggression, but you can take responsibility for not inflicting it on others. I still have desires for this and that, but I will never take anything that doesn't belong to me. I may, in a relationship, I may occasionally have sexual feelings for other people, but I will never act upon them. I may have feelings of embarrassment, shame, and so on, but I will not lie to for any reason. I'll always tell you the truth, and I won't take drink or drugs, which will affect my ability to keep those first 4 commitments to you. So on the basis of 5 precepts, you have a very good foundation for trust, in whether it's in romantic relationships, in family life, or in communities in general. So I think this is how trust is built, through integrity and through maintaining the precepts, is a very good measure of that. For oneself, I mean, trust in oneself, again, I think that you know for yourself your ability to, whether it's keep precepts or to keep promises to yourself or intentions and to follow through on them, your integrity that you have demonstrated in your life, and you know to what extent you can trust yourself in those situations, you know. And the Buddha did emphasize that we should know ourselves, and what he means by that is, you know, knowing our strong points and our weak points, and being humble enough to recognize that, you know, something is just too much of a temptation for us, it's just too much pressure, then very gracefully withdraw from that situation. One of the stories that Ajahn Chah used to tell the monks was when he was a young monk in his 20s and traveling around by himself, and he was in a monastery, and there was a woman came to the monastery every day, and he just woke up one night and realized that he was starting to develop feelings for this woman. So he just got up, packed all his gear, and left in the middle of the night, just went somewhere else. He ran away, basically. And he wasn't ashamed of that. In fact, he wanted to tell us all, you know, sometimes the wisest thing is just run away and make a fresh start. So it's not always the, you know, when you realize, yeah, I can't, in this, you have to be frank, I can't trust myself here. And if I'm going to be true to my principles and my vocation or my ideals, then I need to take a step back and reassess what I'm doing. So I think that so I've never really articulated this before, I think, but like trust as an act of faith, which you hope will bring out the best in yourself or others. Sometimes there's room for that, but the really solid trust comes from consistently maintaining one's integrity in the face of pressures and temptations to fall away from them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn. May I please now invite our next friend, Patricia. Patricia, could you please unmute yourself? And where are you from, Patricia?
Thank you. I'm from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. And my question,
Welcome.
hello, Ajahn.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity for us to ask you questions towards our practice. Thank you, everybody, for hosting this meet. And Ajahn, my question has to do also with the determination in the practice, because it's extended holiday now in Brazil. It's Independence Day on the 7th of September. And so Ajahn Mudito is doing now an online retreat. I registered to do this online retreat, but I had to give it up because there had been some work here in my house, like refurbishing closets and things, and it's a whole mess. And I have some tasks that I have to do for my work that have a deadline. And so I saw myself in a situation I should give up doing the retreat. And I have been wondering since if that would be like a trap of the mind to refrain from being like more determined in my practice and do the retreat no matter what, or if I'm just being like practical and facing facts and doing whatever I can. So I would like some guidance in terms of how I should view the situation. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, like practice and retreats are not one and the same thing, you know, so you can still practice. It just means that you're not practicing in that particular form. And the Buddha thought a lot about our knowing time and place, what's appropriate. Even in monasteries, there are times when your monks have to put down their sitting and walking for a while and work on building projects or other practical things, especially in the West when there's not so much financial support, and a lot of the work has to be done by the monks or the nuns themselves. So it's not only householders who have this kind of dilemma sometimes. But I think that there are retreats. There'll come retreats, small retreats will come along. But the idea is really, how's the best way to practice right now, given what you feel to be your responsibilities. And householder life is not a monastic life, and you do have sacrifices that you have to make, and sometimes compromises. That's part of lay life or householder life, isn't it? That's not something to resent, but it's something to say, well, how can I make the best of this? And that I don't know what the opportunities, what the rules are about the retreat, but maybe you can participate in some parts of it and just and maybe not the whole thing. But in case where there's noise and movement around, you think, well, how can I keep my mind in the most wholesome state? So being mindful around the situation, not allowing this resentment or poor me, it's not fair, I was looking forward to this for so long. And the way that the mind could start going on, and you just recognize that, say, enough, I heard that one before, and just, yeah, it's like this, it's okay, it's not the very best it could be, but it's good enough, we can work with this. That's that idea of, this is the for me, this is the meditation. Yeah, I can work with this. It's not ideal for sure, but I can still learn something from this. That sense I'm learning. It's maybe not what I want to learn right now, but this is what it is right now. So be happy with it.
Okay, so let me skip on to the typewritten questions now. So to the person who's typed in the question in, I think it's in Italian, unfortunately I can't read it, but you're welcome to ask the Italian question directly to Ajahn, and if he can answer you in Italian, that would be wonderful.
No, I'm afraid I can't speak Italian.
Right, so let me read out the English question.
Maybe, but we have, I think, if Julia is online, Julia is my student who can translate Italian very well. So if there is an Italian language question and Julia's online, then please, Julia, help out.
Okay, I'll put the Italian question in the chat box such that Julia can help me to translate it. But let me read out one English question first, Ajahn. The question here is, the Buddha speaks about liberation through attainment or disenchantment. What exactly does it mean?
Yes, well, you have to really look at what enchantment means. Disenchantment means no longer enchanted or no longer taken in, no longer fooled. It's like won't get fooled again. This is disenchantment. So my analogy for this is like a conjuring trick. If you watch a magician, and it's so fascinating, it's a trick, but you can't see how it's done. And you can watch the trick again and again and again, I think, and enjoy it because you don't understand how it's done. But the moment someone tells you, or maybe you've got quick enough eye to catch up how it's done, you don't ever want to watch it again. You know, why would you watch it? You know how it's done. So what you're seeing would be exactly the same thing, but what's changed is your understanding of the sleight of hand, of the trick, of how it's made to seem so exciting and enticing. So understanding the nature of the 5 khandhas is like understanding the magic trick. And once you understand them, then you don't feel any pull towards them anymore. There's no excitement and the same kind of interest anymore. But it's not sometimes, particularly in Thai language, Asian language, often this word nibbida, the Pali word nibbida, is translated in a way of giving a sense of some kind of revulsion. And I think that it's not necessarily that kind of emotional, and it's certainly not a negative mental state. But I think that one thing that can happen is a little bit like if you, let me say, you really used to like eating meat, big meat eater, and then you become a vegetarian. And then after some years of being vegetarian, you go past somebody eating meat, and there's just this instinctive kind of aversion to it. It's the same smell, the same thing that you used to enjoy so much, and now it's just there's something you don't want to go near that anymore. So that can be one aspect of it, for in certain cases, but it's much more that this kind of delight and interest and commitment to the 5 khandhas is based upon not seeing how they work. And the clearer you see it, then the less the attachment and the less the identification. And this is the meaning of disenchantment.
Thank you. So, and there's a next question, which is, what is the difference between emotions and feelings? So this person is asking for clarification.
Yeah, this is a kind of a language question, really. So there's no word for emotion in Pali. So the Buddha never referred to emotion. So talking about, there are many different ways of talking about mental states or the 5 khandhas, if you like. And if we start with the 5 khandhas, then we have what's called vedana, or feeling. And actually, I much prefer the translation of vedana as feeling tone. So it's the tone of experience. And so it's basically positive, negative, or neutral feeling tone of experience. At any moment, our experience always has a tone to it. And that is the meaning of vedana, or what has been translated as feelings, and now more and more translators are using feeling tone. But feelings in English language generally is a much more ambiguous, and it's not really very clearly defined. It just means a mental state. We say my feelings are hurt, or I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling that. So it's a very kind of unclear concept. Now, emotions, I would say, would be included, let's say, first of all, in what we call the sankhara khandha, or volitional formations. And And I think the reason why this concept of emotion, what has been coined, or why it's quite useful concept, is that it refers to emotion. It refers to mental states that have very clearly defined physical expression. So like a mental state, let's say like pamoja, the sense of well-being, or piti, or sukha, there's not clearly defined physical counterpart, but something like anger and fear, jealousy tend to be a very clear association, a very fixed pattern of physical expression. So this is just a theory of mine. I'm not. This is not dealt with in the Theravada Buddhist texts. So that's one idea about emotion. I'm not sure whether I'd stake my life on it, but my recommendation is to keep coming back to the Pali and to become familiar and fluent in the language and the categories that the Buddha used until they become second nature. So be thinking in terms of form, the physical body, of feeling tone, of memory perception, of volitional formations, of sense consciousness. And unless there's no choice, or sometime in ordinary conversation, then, as I say, you can use the word emotion, but in Dhamma practice, I would avoid using the word. So it's a word that, very common word, and don't have to suddenly stop using it and start insisting everybody uses Buddhist terminology in everyday conversations. You become insufferable if you did that. But in Dhamma practice, then that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Ajahn. I have a savior in Roberto. He has translated the Italian question.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. Excuse me.
So the Italian question, the question in Italian reads like this: is there in Buddhist practice something like seeking the meaning of life?
Not in my Buddhist practice. This idea that there is a thing called the meaning of life, and that you can seek it and you can find it, is not an idea that I would really sign up for. My preferred question is, how do we bring meaning to life? How can we live our life in such a way that we feel it has meaning and purpose? That for me is a much more useful question. I think this idea that there is a meaning of life that we have to discover, that's a red herring. It doesn't really lead anywhere very useful.
Ajahn.
Okay, maybe Roberto, you can translate that into Italian for the...
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yes, okay, next question.
So can I invite Sister Evie? Sister Evie, could you please unmute yourself and start your video, please? Are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself? Can you try again? Can you try again? Click on the unmute button. You're frozen. Maybe we can come back to you later. Okay, now you're okay. Good. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Ajahn Jayasaro. I would like to ask for your advice as to how I can keep a positive mind state at the start of my regular chanting. The reason I'm asking this is because lately I've received a list of names to be chanted for, but their medical stats aren't promising. So it's like oxygen saturation 67%, where they started being put on ventilators. And most of the names on the list have passed away. So now I'm having that moment of feeling sad and helpless just before chanting as I'm looking at the list of names. And I don't want to start chanting for people in that kind of mind state. Thank you.
I'm sorry, your voice was unclear. Would you mind repeating? Your connection may be not so good.
Okay. Okay, I'll start again. I would like to ask for your advice as to how I can keep a positive mind state at the start of my regular chanting. The reason I'm asking this is because lately I've received a list of names to be chanted for, but their medical stats aren't promising. Like the oxygen saturation is 67%, or they started being put on ventilators. And most of the names on the list have passed away. So now I'm having that moment of feeling sad and helpless just before chanting as I'm looking at the list of the names. And I don't want to start chanting for people in that kind of mind state.
Yes, well, it might be worthwhile in making 2 or 3 different lists. So and having the people who are in pain or in danger of losing their life in one list, and the people who have already passed away in another list, and the people who are still reasonably healthy in another list, and to be able to approach it in an appropriate state of mind. Of course, if we're chanting for people who are in pain or in danger of losing their life, we're not going to feel very happy about that. I mean, in that case, it's not the loving kindness which comes to the fore, but it is a compassion. And in the 4 Brahma Viharas, these are the 4 say positive emotions, if you like. The 4th one is Upekkha, and that is equanimity. And it is the equanimity which sustains the mind when we are face to face with pain and suffering, and when it threatens to become too much for us. And the upekkha is this recognition that we are all the owners of our karma. We're the heirs to our karma. We are born of our karma. And all these poor people who are suffering at the moment, this is the karma, their karma at the moment. So recognizing the role of karma doesn't mean that we turn away from them, or that we just say, well, that serves them right. That's not how it works. But it provides a perspective on this, our intention to chant and to wish them to be free from suffering, or wish them to be happy. This recognition, this is samsara. It's like this. The Buddha taught us we are born, we get old, we get sick, we die. If we don't get sick of one thing, we get sick of another thing. If we don't die of one thing, we die of another thing. This is like the big picture. This is the the background that we need to be able to recall. And so we chant and we send thoughts of loving kindness and compassion, and that's what we can do. But it doesn't take away the suffering of the world. It doesn't take away even a tiny drop of the suffering of the world if we're looking, big picture wise. But we do it anyway because it's the right thing to do, and we feel this is our role, this is our task to do this. But this is like bodhisattva action, and we do this without hope for reward, and recognizing that we can't do very much at all in practical terms, but we're doing what we can do, and we take pride in that, a wholesome pride that we are not turning away from the suffering of the world. We're not unrealistic about what we can do, but we do what we can do, and take joy that we are trying to live our life as sensitive and compassionate human beings in the face of so much pain.
Thank you, Ajahn. May I please now invite Brother Rajendra Kutru to unmute yourself and start your video, if you can.
Ajahn, I'm from India. We have met here. Rajendra Kachuru. Anumodhan,
Yes, good
salam to
evening.
you. Good evening. Ajahn, I wanted to continue with what you just now said about emotions and feelings. So I was trying to understand it. Suppose if I say in English, I'm feeling sad. Now here I'm using two words, feeling and sadness. Now I see sadness and feeling as synonymous because they are it's rising in the mind. And so if there is a perception and a sankhara there, which says that this is what is sadness. And that is how I relate with that. And so would it be okay to observe it like that?
Yes, the point I was making is that we have agreed ways of using language, and I feel sad is completely normal, legitimate way of talking about our inner life right now, our inner experience. But when we say I feel sad, then we're making actually quite a few unfounded philosophical assumptions. One, there is an I, there is this I who has something or feels something which is sadness. And so that's, we have to use these ways of speaking. It just helps our communication. It would be too difficult to be precise in terms of, Dhamma terminology. But at the same time, recognize when we use the word feeling here, I think what we mean is experience. I am experiencing sadness. Or even more precisely, there is the experience of sadness. So if we take away this superimposition of an owner of sadness or an experiencer of sadness, we say there is sadness. But as I say, it just makes everyday conversation impossible. So we say, I feel sad right now. And we know what you mean. But if in private, when we're looking to understand the nature of body and mind, then we don't need to think in that way or to articulate things in that way. So with the experience of sadness, then there is a feeling tone of an unpleasant feeling tone. But there may also occasionally be that unpleasant feeling tone might be quite weak, so it's almost a neutral feeling tone on occasions. So this is how we investigate the five khandhas, seeing how they arise, how they change, how they mutate, how they pass away, the causes and conditions that underlie their arising, their short or long duration, their passing away. And for that, we need to use the Buddha's technical language rather than everyday terminologies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To the next question. This is a typewritten question. Let me read it out, please. My partner and I are Buddhist practitioners, but many times our egos come in our way of living and even speaking harmoniously with each other. What's advice for us, Tanajan? Thank you.
Well, first of all, when you have a loving relationship, it's never going to be pure love there, which is, there's always going to be a certain amount of defilement involved with unenlightened human beings. But the Buddhist idea of a romantic or a loving relationship or marriage is that we try to become Kalyana Mitta, to become the good friend of our partner. And the good friend is someone who tries to help the other person to free themselves of their vices and defilements, and to support and encourage the kusala and the goodness in them. So the Buddhist path is one of, summarized as the abandonment of all the unwholesome, the development of all this wholesome, the purification of the mind. And in a married couple, then our role and our ideal is to help in whatever way we can for our partner to be able to free themselves of the unwholesome, develop the wholesome, and to purify their mind. So this sense of being good friends to each other and making that the basis, and how can we be good friend, and what is it that stands in the way of being good friend to each other. And so there are so many ways in which defilements and petty defilements can be provoked and exposed in intimate relationships. And we know that when we open ourselves up to another person, then like we give them the keys to the door, and they know both how to make us happy in a way that nobody else does, but also they know all the buttons to push. And they know how to hurt us in ways that nobody else does. And that's the kind of the gamble you take when you embark upon a close relationship with one other person. So as being in that kind of relation, you make a firm resolve that you will never use that knowledge to hurt the other person, whatever the provocation. We hope that that person in turn will make a similar commitment. So ego is another one of those Western words, and sometimes it can be helpful, but I think it's better to avoid using ego and to use the words that the Buddha used, because that's much more precise and helpful in dealing with things. So we call ego sometimes it's conceit, this sense of being superior or inferior, or equal to another person, or it can be attachment to views and opinions, looking at the different lists of defilements, the different kinds of attachment, and being able to put your finger precisely on when we had that row the other day, or when we had that disagreement, what exactly was going on there? You know, why did we fall into that rut, into that same old pattern, and what can we do about it in the future? So the just as in formal meditation practice, the focus on a meditation object reveals, helps to expose and reveal hindrances and defilements, so that knowing them, understanding them, we can learn how to let them go. And it's the same thing in a relationship. You know, if there is some conflict, then conflict always based on defilements. It might be 50, 6 of one and half dozen of the other, or it might be more on one side than the other. But this is the work to do, and there's been exposing these attachment to ideas of self, and attachment to views and opinions, and etc., etc. So I would suggest to say, well, yeah, this is Dhamma practice for married couples. You know, what is it that comes up to obstruct and to undermine the love that we feel for each other, and how can we practice in order to deal with that? So it's being very honest and humble, and really being willing to look into difficult issues, difficult conversations. And when you're both in a calmer mood, then going through things and learning from them and finding ways of preventing them happening in the future.
Thank you, Ajahn. Well, there's several type questions, and this pertains to meditation. So, pertains to metta cultivation. So the question is, how can someone with a strong aversion towards oneself and towards others be helped to cultivate metta? Because the metta practice is very weak. Thank you.
I have a method. I'm not sure how well it works, because I just recently came up with this, so maybe you can try it out. So when people say they have an aversion to themselves, I'm not sure, what does that really mean? I mean, they have an aversion to habits, or an aversion to mental states, or it's quite a, to me, it's quite a weird idea altogether, you know, to have an aversion to yourself. But anyway, put that to one side. My advice is to spread metta to your body, and start off with the top of your head, and develop this warm feeling of metta. You know, you can start off by thinking of a puppy or a kitten or anything at all. It's just a way of just sort of kindling that feeling, that like unqualified kindness, warm kindness. And then you say, may the top of my head be happy. May my forehead be happy. May my right ear be happy. May my left ear be well. May my left nostril be well. Because it's funny as well. It's kind of humorous, and sort of puncture your self-importance a bit. But you know, you may say, I hate myself. I'm a terrible person. But I don't think anybody really hates their left nostril, or their right nostril, or their top lip, or their bottom lip, or their their teeth, or their tongue, or their throat. So this is a way of just sort of creeping up on yourself rather than sort of full frontal, I hate myself. Yeah, but you should love yourself. What are you going to do? You know, so start off with neutral ground. It's your body. I think everyone, even if they don't like themselves, or maybe they don't like what they look like in the mirror, but at least you can say having a nose is better than not having one, even if you think it's the wrong shape. And you know, having a face is better than not having a face. And so just go through your body, and you just develop this like warm feeling to each part, all from your head all down to your toes, and just feel this warm, loving feeling to your body, your felt body, not the body you see in the mirror, because that just, you know, I'm too big, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too tall. We're not talking about like body image. We're talking about felt experience of the body, and develop this warm, kind feeling. And this is my theory, you see, is that by some kind of magical osmosis, this warm, unreservedly positive feeling to the body spreads into the mind. And there is a metta for, what you say, for yourself, the embodied self, at least, that can appear. So this is like a practical technique or method that I would like to share with you, and give it a try. So yeah, and I think you have to, you know, on another level, so, you know, this idea of hating yourself or being averse to yourself and so on. And so you can look into that. I mean, if you look, say, in the past, let's say you've done some really stupid thing, for example, and I never forgive myself for that. How could I possibly have done that? I'm such a bad person. So if we look, let's say this happened a year ago today, then you say, well, on that particular day, you know, I only had this much mindfulness, this much kindness, this much restraint, this much patience, and I had this much greed, this much anger, this much jealousy, this much, and in the balance of things, the defilements were stronger than the virtues. So it's just as simple as that. There's not me who was a bad person. There were all the mental qualities that would have been required to act well in that situation were outnumbered and outweighed by all the mental states which led you to act in a foolish way. So what to do? Now, well, there is something you can do. You can work to reduce the amount of unwholesome mental states which cause this behavior to occur, and you can cultivate the positive mental states that would help you to act better next time. So there's some hope, because there's not this fixed you who's who is this way and who's unworthy of love, is worthless, useless, terrible person. You know, that's just propaganda. You know, you've just been telling yourself this so long, you believe it. But if you look at what actually happens in any situation, it's a matter of kusala dhammas, akusala dhammas. It's a matter of mental states. And I say, if the negative mental states have been cultivated and indulged in long enough, then they come to the fore and they take the floor, they take over. But that doesn't mean it has to be like that in the future. You can do something about it.
Thank you, Ajahn. There are a lot of type questions. Anyone wants to ask questions directly before I go to the type written questions? You can click on the raise hand button and unmute. No? All right. Yes, Sister Sikitak and Kanti, could you unmute yourself? You're from Penang, aren't you? Sister Kanti, can you unmute yourself, please? We can't hear you.
Okay.
Are you from Penang?
Yeah, I'm from Penang. Good evening, Ajahn. And
Good evening.
Good evening, Veda. My question is, every time when I see defilements arising, I can see that it is due to this perception, views and opinions, and then the sankhara, due to ignorance and this sense of craving, attachment, and the sense of self coming up in almost, it's like occurring every day, don't know how many times. Each time these unpleasant sensations arises, negative impressions rather, at the sixth sense doors. However, after seeing this as due to this sense of self, how do I further improve myself to be able to cut down all these defilements? Can Ajahn share? Thank you.
Well, it seems to me you've made a good start. You seem to have quite close observation of what's going on. I would say that we have this framework for practice, the threefold training, what they call the sikha, and that is sila, samadhi, and panya. And those three aspects of the training have to be developed in harmony together. So in the sila training, then the main virtue that's needed is this strong determination to refrain from actions and speech which harm ourselves or others. That may be within the framework of the 5 precepts or on the poster days of the 8 precepts, or we can make our own practices and vows to supplement the 5 precepts, or to enhance the 5 precepts. That's something that's also possible. But together with the 5 precepts, then the training of samadhi in the threefold training. The word samadhi doesn't mean samma samadhi. It doesn't refer to the 4 jhanas or whatever. It's a general term for the training of the heart. In particular, there's 4 right efforts. Firstly, to protect the mind against unarisen, unwholesome dhammas, and to abandon or let go of those that have arisen. Thirdly, to introduce into the mind, to invite into the mind, to plant in the mind of the wholesome dhammas that are not yet arisen, and to develop those that have already arisen. This is right effort in the Eightfold Path. And this has to be conducted together with the sila practice. And in fact, it has a part to play in the sila practice. For instance, to keep precepts purely, then you need mindfulness, you need patience, you need loving kindness, for instance. So developing these wholesome qualities helps us to keep precepts. Then the third area is of wisdom cultivation, and that begins with looking, investigating, developing the more discursive meditations, that is to say, thinking meditations. For instance, investigating the 32 parts of the body, reflecting on death, the loving kindness, reflections. These are all ways of using the thinking mind to in cultivation. And then the wisdom practice on the higher levels, vipassana, insight into the three characteristics. So to deal with, the arising of defilement, or the craving and so on, then first of all there is the clear determination not to act upon those defilements, not to be manipulated by them, not to speak if the mind is being affected by defilement, seeking to maintain mindfulness and learning how to recognize and abandon any delight in defilement, because defilements stay in the mind because one part of your mind wants them to be there, and that's what you have to see. The way you give a home to defilements, and you encourage them in a way, you indulge in them, so that a thought, an angry thought, a selfish, jealous thought that pops up in your mind, that's the result of old karma in the past. But whether or not it stays in your mind, that's something that you're doing right now because you're holding on to it. So you can learn not to do that. That's where you need that clarity and sharpness of mind, and the patience and willingness just to be there and not allow these cravings and so on to completely take over your mind. So there are many different wholesome qualities that you need. And then again, looking and investigating, as in the previous question, I'm saying, someone said, "Oh, I've been depressed all day." I said, "Well, really? Have you? Every single breath, every single second of the day, have you been depressed?" "Oh, well, not exactly. There are times when I'm neutral, and there might even be moments where you have a smile, or it's not sure thing." But seeing the impermanence of mental states is a very important wisdom practice, and being able and asking oneself questions like, when people say, "Oh, so and so made me angry." Nobody can make you angry. Somebody can provoke you, and somebody can treat you badly, or somebody could harm you physically, or could speak to you in a horrible way. But whether or not you become angry is not solely in the hands of that person. Anger will only result if you participate in it, if you agree, you consent to be angry. So you can say, "Oh, somebody did this or somebody said this," but what really makes you angry is they shouldn't do that, or they shouldn't be that way. This sense of non-acceptance of the present moment, saying it shouldn't be. That's a cause of all kinds of suffering. And why shouldn't it be? They shouldn't treat me that way. Well, yeah, I don't want to be treated that way for sure, and it might be against the law even, but it's happened because that person thinks that way, because that person has no regard for others, or has no respect for me, or so there are all kinds of causes and conditions that have come together for that action or for those words. But whether or not we become angry as a result is not inherent in what they've said, because if an arahant was to be treated in that way, they wouldn't suffer. So if it was just a straightforward cause and effect, it would affect everybody. but there is some part of the anger has to involve something from within us, some craving from an attachment from within us. So this is how we can look at things and say, oh well, he said something and it made me very angry, and they say, well, suppose it was somebody else, suppose it was somebody that you love or somebody that you don't know, would it be the same? So looking at all the different factors and seeing how, if they were changed slightly, whether the result would have been the same. This is wisdom analysis that can help to deal with these kinds of challenges in life. So in short, to deal with the problems that you mentioned, there's the practice of the education and training of body and speech through sila, the four right efforts applied to wholesome and unwholesome mental states, and the wisdom beginning with this using the thinking mind as a tool to investigate, and at the highest level, a higher level, using the mind which has been stabilized and clarified through meditation to investigate the three characteristics that manifest at that moment, at that time.
Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you.
So I think we have time for one last question. Can I please invite Bhante? Bhante, can you unmute yourself, please?
Namaste, Ajahn. How are you?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question which is quote unquote quasi-Buddhist. I come from a background of being a believer, and I walked the seeking life in a different manner till I found Vipassana around 2 decades back. But this one thing that has stayed with me is this feeling of trust that the universe is benevolent and there is nobody out there to get us. There's this sense of ease about things, irrespective of the conditions that one is in. Of course, in the small and medium term, I may lose this focus, but most of the time I have this feeling of, quote unquote, again, being cared for, but no particular person or deity that I actually trust per se. Now, combining this with my practice, my question to you, very often when I hear or when I read the Buddha or our way of functioning as a practitioner, this aspect is not talked much about. I used to joke on one of my retreats that I attended. I told the teacher that you stole away God from me. I don't know who to blame anymore. So while it was said in jest, but the feeling is that I continue to feel at ease with the universe per se. So what is your guidance on this? I don't have any fixed feelings per se, but I've always wondered how to look at this.
Yes, I would use, although I was born in England, as you know, and in a Christian, basically Christian or somewhat post-Christian society, the idea of God never made any sense to me. I had no handle on it. It just seemed a kind of a alien idea to me. So my background is different in that way. But my interpretation has been that there are qualities of the heart, qualities of the mind, which are pure and benevolent and bright and joyful, which are intuited, and because there is no sense of self and ownership, then there is an assumption that therefore, if it's not me, then it must be somebody else. There's some deity or some benevolent force out there, and this is how I would guess that ideas of God become those more sophisticated ideas of God are so compelling for so many people.
Yeah.
But I've never had that background or that inclination to characterize those feelings as being evidence of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, that as the mind becomes more and more clear of defilement, is just the nature of the mind, or the nature of the nature, if you like. It's just the way things are. And so when the Buddha was enlightened, then the expressions of his enlightenment were limitless compassion, limitless kindness, unbounded goodness, and wisdom and purity. So these were the characteristics of the unbound mind. So if you look at a mind as being all kind of bound up and tied up, and then when the mind is released, then this is its nature. And the Buddha said that the Nippanang Paramang Sukhang, which means like Nibbana is the ultimate happiness.
Yeah.
So we could say, then perhaps we could say this is Nibbana. You know, these are intuitions or some slight inkling of Nibbana. And in fact, the Buddha did say on occasions that the experience of the deeper levels of meditation can give you some small idea, some inclination of the nature of Nibbana. It's not Nibbana, but it gives us some idea. So I think you've been blessed to have that kind of intimation of something beyond everyday concerns, beyond the ego, beyond personality, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you have, and that's a way forward for you in your practice to try to move towards that and to experience that more and more in your life.
Oh, thank you so much. This is very inspiring, sir.
Ajahn, I know that when we are nearing to the hour, do you have some more time to take 2 more questions from the floor?
Yes, why not?
Okay, could we now please invite Adrian? Adrian from Malaysia. Could you unmute yourself?
Hi, Ajahn.
Yes, hello, Adrian.
Okay, I have heard that in the suttas, Venerable Ananda and Venerable Mahakashyapa didn't exactly get along with each other. I want to get from your opinion, from your knowledge, is it true? And if it is true, then how do we approach it? That 2 Aryas have like sort of not so good feelings with each other.
Well, I don't think it was that kind of relationship, you know, when they had negative feelings towards each other. But I think Mahakashyapa was like kind of fierce kind of arahant, you know, and so, you know, in Thailand, in living Buddhist tradition, you know, the great monks that I've known or have been in Thailand the past 40, 50 years, you know, very many different personalities, and some of them very fierce and gruff, and you know, when we read things in the suttas, it's almost impossible to get the sense, the tone of voice, and sometimes I think this is kind of like more like a teasing, kind of joking kind of thing, you know, that rather than, you know, a really, that Mahakassapa is like putting him down and telling him off and everything. From my experience of monks and people who've practiced a lot, that yeah, you can't read too much into something that was written in such a sort of a neutral way and such a. But I think that, you know, we might also speculate that if this was considered a sign that they weren't really enlightened, or that there was something there, that there would have been repercussions, and there would have been, the Buddha would have maybe given some instruction and so on. So my feeling is that there was kind of something was a bit humorous, actually. And because, you know, at the time when Mahakassapa was telling Ananda off, you know, it's like he was already 70-something years old, you know. It's like talking like a sort of young whippersnapper, and he's like, he's 70-something, 80 years old. So, you know, I think it was a kind of a funny thing. I have thought myself that the after the Buddha passed away, and the certain Mahayana groups who put forward this new kind of philosophy that arahantship is not the end of the practice, that there's something beyond arahantship, and, you know, or Buddhahood, that it's possible that that might have been due to the fact that arahants sometimes can be quite eccentric figures, and not particularly, you know, how you would expect them to be. Even at the time of the Buddha, you know, there are suttas where the Buddha says, don't make fun of that monk, or, you know, don't speak bad about him because he's actually an arahant, you know, somebody who looks totally uninspiring altogether. While the Buddha was present, you know, his authority was such that he would say he's actually an arahant, and everybody would, of course, believe it. But I'm just speculating here that possibly afterwards there were eccentric, or rather not so, let's say arahants with not so many social skills. And I could imagine people saying, really, is that the end of the path? I wouldn't like to be like him, or I wouldn't like to be like her. Maybe there's something that, you know, beyond this. And so this is just a guess, you know, but as you know, arahants, they abandon all defilements, but personality traits which are not rooted in defilement do not disappear. So a very quiet, introverted Patujana will become a quite quiet, introverted arahant. He won't suddenly become super articulate and give wonderful Dhamma talks. But if you have a really gruff and kind of rude, even Layamaki, maybe he become like a kind of very gruff arahant. So these are, you know, these are not defilements, but these are just personality traits accumulated over many lifetimes. And I think that's probably the case with Mahakassapa, which showed so unusually. I mean, I think anyone, when you first read those suttas, you think, what, you know, that's kind of weird. But that's my guess about it.
Thank you, Thanakan. Perhaps we have time for one last question, and can I please invite Samrit Singh? Samrit Singh, please, to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Thank you, Ajahn, for your time. I hope you remember me.
Yes.
How are you? I'm in Canada these days. So my question to you is like reflecting on that, which is similar to Maruna Sati. So in the past few days, like I realized sometimes when you start reflecting on that, mind runs into a lot of proliferations. It both becomes more anxious and worried, and especially at the times when you are going through some challenging situations or you are sick. So my question is, should we really reflect on Marunasati all the time, or respect, or if we do, when should we do and when should we not? Because a lot of time, even if we understand the impermanence of ourselves and our relationship with the loved ones, especially on the people whom we depend on for emotional and physical support, if we reflect on a death of their, just to prepare ourselves for the future, but in the present moment, the mind runs into proliferations also, and it creates more anxiety, fear, and stress. So my question is, should we really do it? And if yes, when should we do it and when we should not?
Yes, well, with every meditation object, you tend to feel some kind of pull towards it, and like it's something that really works for you or it doesn't. And Maranasati is one which is certainly not for everybody. Unless Maranasati is mindfulness of death. It's not just thinking about death. It's being mindful, and so that means that the mind is disciplined and is in a wholesome state throughout the meditation. So thoughts of anxiety and fear, stress and so on arise, and that's a clear indication that this is no longer the practice of Maranasati. The emphasis on Maranasati should always be upon oneself, on one's own mortality, and keep bringing the mind back to that. In regard to those people around us, then again, it depends upon the strength of your mind and to what extent that you can allow for this kind of reflection, but reminding ourselves of the uncertainty of our relationships with those around us, with the view of creating or increasing the sense of the value of time, the value of relationships, the gratitude that we feel to those people around us. Again, it's coming back to this basic reflection of wholesome and unwholesome dhammas. It should be a reflection which leads to uplift and a sense of the awareness of the passing of time, and really wanting to spend the time that we have with our loved ones, however long or short it may be, and we have no guarantees at all, in the best possible way we can. We reflect on our own death and we say, well, how am I spending my time? So the value of it is it overcomes laziness, and that's the really most appropriate time if you're feeling a sort of losing your enthusiasm, losing your commitment. Then that Maranasati is the method of just reminding ourselves, oh, come on, you don't know how much longer you've got here. Life can disappear at any moment. Let's really get down to it. This is a very valuable human life here, one in which not only we've been born as a human being, but one who's had contact with the Buddha Dhamma. And it's just a golden opportunity to grow in Dhamma, to advance in Dhamma. So it's not for everyone, and but it is something which is it should be cultivated as at least an auxiliary meditation. So if we, for instance, we take Anapanasati, breath meditation, as the primary object, Then we have loving kindness meditation to deal when we get into really extended periods of negativity, investigation of the body, the unattractive parts of the body if the mind is caught up in sensuality, and death meditation if we become very kind of lazy and slothful and losing our way and our commitment to practice. But with each one, then, as I say, if we find consistently that the mind's just not able to sustain it, it just gets drawn into too many unwholesome dhammas, and put it to one side for the time being. But if you can make use of it, particularly as it's focused on oneself, there's a mantra that is Maranang me bhavisati, like death is coming to me. This is the classic death meditation mantra. Maranang me bhavisati. Death is coming to me. Death is coming to me. Death. Because for most of us, yeah, we know that we're going to die, but it's not real. And I mean, I remember, when you're young, you feel invincible, don't you? You just don't. I used to feel like I'm like the hero of one of these TV shows, and yeah, it's dangerous, but you're not going to die because you've got to come back next week. And if you watch Batman or anything, I used to watch Batman as a kid, and you always know at the end of the show when he's in some kind of terrible danger that actually he's not going to die because he's Batman. He's going to come back again in a few days. And that's, feel that about yourself. You're the hero of the story. You've got to come back. But it's a delusion, of course. And so working away, just kind of chipping away at that delusion is a very valuable part of practice.
Ajahn, we are at the hour. We know we've taken up a lot of your evening tonight. We're very reluctant to let you go, but we know we have to let you rest. But before you go, I think as a community, we've been very much blessed by your words of wisdom, by your practice, and just by watching you on screen, Thanajan, from a great distance. Many of us have been very inspired by your words in those little yellow notes, and they've been a constant resource for all of us to go back to. And so we can't put our forehead to the ground as where you are right now. I thought it would be very suitable for all of us to offer you our words of loving kindness, Thanajan, to your good health, to your good well-being, as a gesture for all of us in wishing you well, till we can put our forehead to the ground near you, Thanajan. So with this, may I please invite all my brothers and sisters in this room that let us all now close our eyes, put our hands in Anjali, and think of Ajahn Jayasaro in the hermitage where he is right now, for all the blessings that he has adorned upon us with his words, with his kind teachings and his wisdom for the past over 4 decades. Let us all now offer these words of loving kindness to him. Join me together. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none, through anger or ill will, wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so, with a boundless heart, should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Before we end, let us all now come together and chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods of evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and detachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dharma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the goodness of all these, may the darkness and delusion be dispelled. So together, Ajahn, we're very grateful for your time this evening in offering us your generous teachings. Before we take leave from you, we'd all like to just bow 3 times to you by chanting Araham, and then some of us will meet you in the breakout room to pay respects. Okay. So brothers and sisters, let us all put our palms in Anjali, reflecting upon the generosity of time and resources and the wisdom that Ajahn has offered us this evening. Wherever that you are in the morning, good day to you. And wherever you are in the evening, good evening to you as well. So let us all now chant Araham together. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Avivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Keep well. May you all continue to grow and flourish in the Buddha Dhamma for your own happiness and welfare, and for the happiness and welfare of all beings.
Thank you, Tanajan. We'll see you next year in the breakout.